In the name of Allah, in last session we spoke about functions, PHP functions. As we said, the real power of PHP comes from its functions, and we had more than 1,000 built-in functions that you can check on the reference page of W3 schools for the functions and this category. In each category, we have lots of functions. You can check them and use them, and users learn about the users of all of them. So, in last session we spoke about some functions and creating functions and these topics. Today we will speak about the parameterized functions and others. So our lesson starts from the PHP default argument value. PHP default argument value. So what's default argument? When we call a function, but we have an argument for that function, we have a parameter that function, but we call it without an argument. We call it without any argument. So on that time, the default argument will be called. On that time, the default argument will be called. So what's default argument? When we are defining a function, we put a default argument and with an initial value. With an initial value. That's called a default argument. When we define a value for our argument, we are not just defining the argument, but we are putting or assigning value for that. In that case, that's the default argument. As you see in this example, we have created the set height function with the main height of 15. And here we have used once with 350, another without any argument, another time with arguments. When this without any argument, it will use the 15. Why? Because we assign it to 15 as a default argument for this. Let's execute this one. And any problems on creating functions in last session? Nothing. So we want to create a function. Our function is created as setHeight and has an argument as mainHeight. But for our mainHeight, we have a 15 value. That is the initial value that we call as a default argument. As a default argument, when we call that our function with argument or with a value, this will replace. But when we call it without any argument, only parentheses, then the default argument will be called. On that time, the default argument will be called. Let's see the differences. Localhost test form. So in our definition, we had a default argument of 15. We define it one with 350, another without any value. But without any value, the 15 got printed. Another time 150, another time 18. So in this case, in the first line, we call it our function with a value of 350. We overload it, overwrite in the value. Then another time, we call it the function without any value. Without any value. On that time, this says that we will use the default value of 15. That's how we have set a default value. We set it a default value. Now default value we call it. So default parameter is for checking if our function is called without any parameter. On that time, the default parameter will be called. So and will be used. So the default parameter is just only using for calling when we are using the function without any value. We are not putting any value to our function as an input. On that time, the main or the default argument will be called. Another topic is PHP functions returning values. Sometimes we need to return something. So the functions that they don't return anything, that they are void functions. But when we want to return a specific type, then we call that a return function, that they need a return statement. They need a return statement. So there's an example for this. So analysis is, and the definition says to let a function return a value is a return statement. When you want to return something specific. When you want to return something specific, on that time, you can return anything. The function is sum x and y as a parameters. X and y as a parameters. And there is a calculation on this. The variable is z and z does x plus y. And then it returns the z. It returns the z. A numeric value. A numeric value that returns z. So then we can use the function with parameters but not with the return value. But return that will work according to against or instead of the echo statement on void statements, on void functions. If you check here, we have not returning anything, but just in a body of our function, we equate something. We equate something, we display the message. And instead of returning a specific value, instead of returning a specific value, you just need to write the function with a name. Then define some parameters for that. Defining some parameters. So our function is sum. Now returns a mixed value. Returns a mixed value. So this comes from one of my extensions I have installed for my Visual Studio Code. So and hence says that this is a mixed return. This is a mixed return. So z is equal to x plus y and returns that when we call our function, we do parameters of x and y, x and x10 and y, x5 and 10, y10, then it returns to us the calculation or summation of our function. Let's do this. See that 5 plus 10, 15, 7 plus 13, 20. But how it comes? It comes from this function where we did z x plus y and return z. Return the z. Any result that z has, it will be displayed as we output here. Anything we put, then we get this output, the value of z. Then we get the value of z. So another topic is passing argument by referencing. When we need to reference something, it says that in PHP, arguments are usually passed by value, which means that a copy of the value is used in the function and the variable that was passed into the function cannot be changed. You cannot change the variable when you are passing by value. But when a function argument is passed by reference, change to the argument also change the variable that we passed. To turn a function argument into a reference, the ampersand operator is used. Calling by value, calling by references, two main topics in programming. So calling by value, what means that we put the actual variable. But for reference, we are referencing to something else, to another variable. We are referencing or pointing our variable to another variable. I don't know you have learned about pointers on C++ or not, but the reference in PHP is same way as the pointers in C++. There is an example that use a pass by reference. Pass by reference. Now, the differences in arguments, instead of directly putting the variables, we just need to reference that variable. We need to reference that variable. So what is this? That it says that ampersand value. So it's referenced to this value. This value is referenced to this value. So when you are putting an input or on a parameter to your function, then it references to the main value that we have in our function. The value that we have in our function. So in here, num is 2. When num is added to 5, it will print the 7. Why? Because the pass by reference is used. Updating the variable. So what it means? Updating the variable. When you want to update a variable or change the value, but not in actual code, only in usage. When you execute this one, the actual code will not change, but the execution will change. Let's see that. Oh, I need to put a break line here. Echo break line. Now, in our function, the value is referenced. The value is referenced. Now we are getting 7. We are getting 7 as an output. Why? Because we referenced the value. Anything that comes in arguments of our function. Anything that comes in arguments of our function will be added to the value of this one. Will be added to value of this one. And in the meantime, you can change this one. You can do increment, decrement, or you can do any calculations. But what it means, we are referencing this value to the value that we are passing to our variable. That the value that we are passing to our variable. And here says that the value and reference it to this value. This value is reference to 1. So num is 2. Num is 2. In general, if you are using this without the value, when you are putting 2 to x, it means the x is now changed to the value of new parameter. But when you are referencing, actually you are doing addition or multiplication or division or adding to the value that already exists, combining two values, that the values already exist and you want to add this one, or you want to subtract this one, or you want to multiply this one. You can do anything, like you can do multiplication here. You can put multiplication and then see the result. Now it changes to 10, printed 10 for us. Why? Because we reference it. With that, a reference, you are passing by reference, not passing by value. So we have passed a num variable to our add5 value. To add 5 value. But our add5 value takes a reference variable. So what it means that the value that you are passing to it will be multiplied or will be added, subtracted, any division or anything else, that any logic that you have written here. It will be done using the actual value of our parameter as a reference will not go away. The value will not go away. It will combine with new value in reference. Passing by value is, this is passing by value. X is anything that we pass, actually you are passing to X. You are passing to X and passing by value. But when you are passing by reference, you are actually adding to the variable. You are adding to variable, not replacing the variable. We are not replacing, we are adding the variable to the present variable that we have it. So in here we have value is multiplied by 5. Value is multiplied by 5. Adding 2, it will multiply to this and will print. It will multiply this one and will print the new value. So that's the passing by reference. So another is variable number of arguments. Variable number of arguments. So what it is? This says by using three dots operators in front of the function parameter, the function accepts an unknown number of arguments. This is also called a periodic function. So what it is, when we want to not limit the number of arguments, we are not limiting the number of arguments. We can have multiple arguments. How many the user insert, the variable, the function will accept. We need to pass three dots as operator. Three dots operator in front of the function parameter. So the periodic function argument becomes an array. When you are passing in this way, without limiting the number of accepted elements, then it will change to array. It will change to array and output as an array. So we are not limiting x, y. We are doing how many elements that user inserts, you are allowing that. You are allowing that. At the output, we will take an array. So here's an example. There is an example. Let's see. There is a function sum my numbers. You are putting lots of elements, but we have an x with the trailed dots, with a trailed dots before that. So what it means, you are not limited to insert 1, 2, 3. How many you can insert? Those will change to array. So n is 0. Length is count x. Anything that you have inserted. Then it will loop with a for the indexes of I. It will go up to end of the length. Let's see this one. What it is. It's a function. So there's a function. That function is adding or summing my numbers. We put a trailed dots before our variable. We put a trailed dots. Says that array. Parameters array x. That's an array parameter, as we can say this. If we call it as an array parameter. It's a array parameter that accepts anything value, not limited to the number of elements should be accepted. Not limited to the actual number or a specific number that we need to insert. You can insert anything. So we're passing x, then we pass it these values. It will print us all of them. It will print us all of them. So now what it does summation here. It does summation of our variable. What how? We have a n is 0. We have n is 0. Another, we have the count of x. Count of x, what means? How many elements that you have? How many elements that you have? Then we are looping against that elements. You are looping against that elements. How? We are starting I from 0. You are starting I from 0. Then we do a condition that I less than length. I less than length. So what it means, the I should be less than the number of elements. Why less than? Because you are starting from 0. You are starting from 0. Then we need to count that minus 1. Or you can do this way. Less than or equal to length minus 1. This one with the lower than is equal, the same way. But if you put a less than or equal to length, you will get array out of bound exception. You will get array out of bound exception. So what it means? You are looping against the old variable. Now it says undefined array key 6. Why? Because we said it should be equal to. And this way we are doing less equal to, you should put minus 1 also. Because we are counting from 0. We are counting from 0. Now it will print something. Why? Because and count will not count from 0, but array index starts from 0. When you count something in actual word, you are starting from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, but in arrays, index starts from 0. For that, to avoid problems, we do less than or less than equal to but length minus 1. If you did this one on Java and put this, you will get an array out of bound exception. An array out of bound exception, as we said, undefined array key number 6. Array key number 6. Why? Because we don't have 5 is 0, 2 is 1, 6 is 2, 2 is 3, and 7 is 4. And another 7 is 5. We have 5 elements from 0 to 5. That's 6 elements. But if you do less than or equal to length, it means 6. We don't have 7 values to have an array of index number 6. That's why we put a minus 1 on that. Then we do calculations n plus x and dollars. So what it does? Every step that it goes counts with and sums with the previous number. Sums with previous numbers. The return value is 29. The return value is 29. If you count this, sum this 5 to 7, 3, 7, 21. Yeah, 21 with another 7, another 8 is 29. Yeah, it will count the numbers. So what says the echo A is some numbers 5, 2, 6, 2, 7, 7. When you sum this one or add these numbers, it will output as a 29 number. Please work on this practically, else you won't learn. Once again, I request you to do practice on your computers or on computer lab computers. Practice them. Practice them, because when we come on project, you won't learn anything. So you can also have the combination of single element with array element also. You can also have a single element plus the variable also on using the combinations. So having the operator on first two arguments will raise an error. If you are using this way, this will generate an error for you. If you are having two parameters, if you are having two parameters, then you will get error. Then you will get error. So always, if you are having more than one parameters, put this array at the end. Put this array at the end, not at the first place. So As we said in the PHP the loosely typed language. PHP loosely typed language, and loosely typed language variables take the data types from their values. We are not assigning data types. Yeah, in loosely typed language we are not assigning data types. The variables will take the data type according the value that we assign. So in PHP 7, the type declaration variable. This gives us an option to specify as the expected data type when declaring a function, and by adding a strict declaration, we will throw a fatal error if data type mismatch. As in here it says, if you check, here it says float an integer. Yeah, defining for us something. You can define the parameters data type strictly. You can define the data type strictly with the output. With the output. So I think it's enough. The other types should be to you. We will not continue anymore on this. On next session, we will speak about arrays. So any points on the today lesson?